for that railways were developed. What sparked the railway mania of the 1830s is the discovery that there was such a great demand for fast passenger transport. There were a few visionaries who were talking about this, saying, well, railways were really going to provide for fast transport, that's what people really care about. Hardly anybody believed them. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway that opened in 1830 demonstrates it. Even though the railway was initially planned, all the business plans envisaged almost all the revenues coming from transport of goods. Instead, practically all the revenues come from passenger transport. What society really cared about was fast movement, okay, of people, much less movement of cargo. So, okay, so the mania gets underway, and the mania is now kind of based to a large extent on the promise of building long-haul passenger rail links, okay? Such as that from London to Birmingham. So Liverpool and Manchester are up there, kind of National Midlands, halfway between them and London, roughly Birmingham. Okay? So promoters go out and start building a long railway from London to Birmingham, and another one from Birmingham up to Liverpool and Manchester. And they base their business plan on carriage of passengers between terminal cities. They expect most of the revenues is going to come from people going from London to Birmingham or vice versa, and from Birmingham up to Liverpool, Manchester, or the other direction. Okay? They build the railways in the face of great skepticism. One of the big objections that, or what's reasons for skepticism that people have is that, look, you only have one example of a successful passenger railway, Liverpool, Manchester. Two big cities, 30 miles apart, very closely coupled together. Liverpool is a harbor where the kind of raw materials like cotton come in. It's carried over to Birmingham to the factories, manufactured into textiles, taken back to Liverpool and exported. Okay? There is no other pair of cities in Great Britain that are so closely tied together. So the fact that there's lots of demand for fast transport there doesn't mean you're going to succeed when you now talk about 100-mile, 120-mile trips from, say, London to Bristol. That's the skeptic's case. The proponents go ahead in face of the skepticism. They build their lines. Lines are successful. They make money. And it takes them a long time to realize, for the investors to realize, most of the money is coming from intermediate trips. The demand is not so much for people going from London to Birmingham, but from London to various intermediate towns or maybe suburbs of London and so on. Okay? So again, it's a case almost like stumbling to success. Wildly speculative investment mania that succeeds. So now they get engaged into the railway mania of the 1840s. So again, railways are now seen as success. They succeeded in spite of all the skepticism. Now promoters come out, economic conditions get good, money is plentiful, and now they start kind of building out this network, and this time they lose. Okay? It's a disaster, and really very depressing to them. The general explanation that you can find when you look at the literature of the period, or even later, is that corruption. Lots of stories about George Hudson, the railway king, very influential kind of railway manager, magnate of that period, who was revealed to have, kind of engaged in creative accounting, kind of cooking the books, and so. And his downfall precipitates the kind of the depths of the railway share depression in 1849. Okay. And that's similar again in the internet bubble. There were these many kind of objections, claims that the problem was that all those investment analysts were really paid a lot of money not to notice the things that were wrong. So, and there certainly was a lot of corruption in both cases, but that was not really the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is simply overextended. There was not going to be enough demand. And what's especially interesting is that during the railway mania, unlike during the internet bubble, there were some very perceptive and very influential opponents of that mania who were trying to deflate it. And unfortunately, they did realized what was going on, and their activities were almost surely counterproductive. They probably stimulate extra investments. And especially the three agencies I'm thinking of were the Times of London, The Economist, and one particular very interesting guy, James Morrison, who's a member of parliament. He may have been the world's richest person, a public-spirited citizen, a merchant banker, and textile wholesaler in that case, who again was trying to deflate the bubble on the grounds that it was going to hurt the economy as a whole. And yet somehow they missed the true fatal fallacy of the bubble that led to the disaster. So they never told, in all their arguments, they never claimed that the railways that being built were going to be unprofitable. What they were saying is, yes, railways are great for society, we simply cannot build them this fast as the promoters are trying to do so. Okay? Because if we build it this fast, we're going to drain the economy of capital that's needed for ordinary trade and commerce and manufacturers, and it's going to hurt us in the long run. Says, let's slow things down. Okay? Investors were not willing to listen to that, and it's understandable, you know, if you have a hot prospect, why do you want to delay it a decade if you think you're going to be making money hand over fist? So you rush to complete the work. And they rushed and they lost. Now, my claim is that they should have seen they were going to lose. So I'm going to skip some details. There's a kind of wonderful story which discusses the traffic takers. What happened is that, again, literature is missing this. I kind of dug it up, and there are only traces of this in modern literature. The British kind of society had a systematic method for estimating demand for railway travel. That was in operation at that time. It was a methodology that came into existence during the mania of the 1830s, and it turned out to work beautifully. It turned out to work more accurately than modern rail transport demand methodologies work. Even though today we have, you know, century and a half of experience, we have all sorts of computer models, we have demographic information, just about anything you can name. If you actually look at the track record of forecasting demand for transportation projects, it's pretty poor. These traffic takers of the 1830s did better than that. Even though the methodology was based on some false assumptions. Interestingly enough, the false assumptions, the errors canceled each other. So the methodology worked beautifully in the 1830s, but they didn't know it beforehand. So they adopted the methodology. Well, why? Well, it's a long story, but it became the accepted methodology that was untested. They actually had to build out the railways. Once they were built in the mid-1840s, they could look back and say, this works beautifully. But they didn't do it. Okay? Actually, it's one of these what I call collective hallucinations. They somehow developed the conviction that traffic takers had been unduly pessimistic. Okay. And it was clearly false. But I mean, there were some reasons for it, and then I won't go into the details. So there was a prediction, there was a time-tested, very reliable prediction methodology. And actually, if you apply that methodology in a certain interesting way, that would have shown that they were going to be to lose. The investors were going to lose during the mania of the 1840s. So the one and only reliable prediction technique they had could have been used to predict disaster in the 1840s, but they didn't do it. Furthermore, we should have seen they were overdoing things, so it's not too much of expecting too much of a good thing, and some very, very rough grounds, which again, I only found one person who kind of realized it, that case, a very interesting chap named Dionysius Labner. What they were implicitly expecting is that the railway industry was going to grow its revenues tenfold. So by 1845, kind of the height of the speculative excitement of the railway mania, the railway industry collects annual revenues, gross revenues, about £6 million, slightly over 1% of British GDP. And they were expecting it to grow 5 to 10-fold over the next 5 years. And that they should have seen that was absurd. Again, growing things tenfold is not necessarily absurd. They succeeded in doing it during the 1830s and early 1840s. Remember, they started out with a network of maybe, say, 300 miles. they ended up with a network of 21, 2200 miles.